Andrew, from gold standard to emergency, what a turnaround it's been.
Yes, Kieran, and the battle lines are drawn in terms of the way out of a Sydney lockdown, which threatens to last until the end of the year without drastic action. On the one hand, you've got the New South Wales government saying we need to rush vaccines into the COVID hotspot areas of southwestern Sydney, particularly to essential workers, to get out of this lockdown. But that call was rebuffed by the federal government and other states on Friday. So on the other hand, the federal government is urging behind the scenes for New South Wales Premier Gladys Berejiklian to go even harder with her lockdown. Speaking to several sources yesterday, one even spoke of the need for a 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. curfew to stop people visiting each other and giving each other the virus. Perhaps we need both the vaccination blitz and extra lockdown measures. I've interviewed New South Wales Police Commissioner Mick Fuller, who says he cannot see the point where we get to zero cases in Sydney at the moment, and he also claims it's impossible to enforce the ring of steel in southwestern Sydney that others are calling for.
You can't do it practically, and again, if you look at some of the times that like the northern beaches, it had sort of a couple of key points in and a couple of key points out, which made it very easy to police. But Fairfield, as an LGA, it was practically impossible to put a ring of steel in. And at the same time, again, if you think about the way the virus is spreading at the moment, the ring of steel wouldn't have worked. I mean, we don't police inside people's homes in terms of enforcing health orders. And I really think the messaging, Andrew, at the moment is so important in terms of people really staying home and understanding that if you bring the virus into your house, you're going to give it to a loved one and they may die. The way the Delta variant is running through, particularly Sydney at the moment, is that I can't see us getting down to zero for some time.
That interview later in the program. The Commissioner also saying there was more compliance on the streets from people in southwestern Sydney than elsewhere in Sydney.
To be honest with you, the compliance out in the street and at workplaces in southwestern Sydney is extremely high, and non-compliance, we're seeing more around the beaches and north and south of Sydney, and of course those who are leaving Greater Sydney into regional New South Wales without cause. So they're the majority of the breaches. We're writing between 200 and 250 tickets a day to people who have no regard for the health orders or no regard for the health and well-being of their neighbours, friends or family. So we're seeing high levels of compliance in southwestern Sydney in terms of what's happening outside of the home environment, but certainly we are seeing great challenges in terms of the rates of COVID hits in houses right across southwestern Sydney, and that is growing as of today.
So Gladys Berejiklian went out and called her lockdown a national emergency on Friday without telling the PM or other states she was doing so. She then rang several premiers and the PM to try to get the deal done to have other state vaccine supplies to southwestern Sydney. They all said no. At National Cabinet then, Berejiklian recalibrated to ask that GP appointments for Pfizer injections in New South Wales be dumped to redirect the vaccines to essential workers who live in southwestern Sydney. Major General JJ Fruin, who is heading the vaccine rollout, aggressively slapped down that plan, saying they could not simply cancel vaccination appointments. The PM and other states backed Fruin in. From the federal point of view, last week they sent 150,000 extra Pfizer doses and 150,000 extra AstraZeneca doses to New South Wales. The Pfizer doses did not go in bulk to southwestern Sydney, they make the point, and the AstraZeneca doses haven't been used. Daniel Andrews, the Victorian Premier, told the National Cabinet he might be prepared to sign off on some doses earmarked for Victoria going to New South Wales if Berejiklian showed him modelling, showing that her lockdown measures were working, in a sign he doesn't believe she is locking down hard enough in the first instance. This strategy from Berejiklian on Friday was a monumental failure for the New South Wales Premier, whose hubris is catching up with her. Her criticism of the approach of other states, including Victoria, for their lockdown strategies has not helped New South Wales in its pleas for vaccines now. Here is Gladys Berejiklian telling Kyle and Jackie O a few months ago she wouldn't be giving vaccines to Victoria.
Oh, I heard
See
that
you next
Victoria
Tuesday.
wants some of our Pfizer vaccines. They're not getting it.
No, I can't.
Good.
The feds are giving them more anyway.
Okay, so they're not coming from New South Wales.
No, the federal government has from last week given them more AstraZeneca, I think. But
Why does everyone look to us to save their own stupid decisions?
I can't comment on that.
Berejiklian has been talking about so-called green shoots in terms of the COVID numbers for days and claiming she was still in control of the virus numbers with her restrictions. Then on Friday, she flips the switch to national emergency. It was clear where this outbreak was heading a week and a half ago when I confronted the Premier at a daily press conference. When are you going to acknowledge it's time to lock it down harder to get rid of this thing?
The people of New South Wales know that our government has access to the best health experts in our nation.
It's not shifting. The numbers aren't shifting.
What is interesting to note about Delta variant is different to anything we've seen, and we know...
Best health advice has just got us a 5-week lockdown.
Had we not taken the action we did, we wouldn't be talking about 65 or 100 or 120 cases. We'd be talking thousands. And that is the difference. We took the action we did when we did to avert medical and health disaster.
And here is my exchange with Gladys Berejiklian midweek last week, where she refuses to acknowledge her contact tracers had lost control of the virus in Sydney. Have we lost control?
No.